Well, Julie and I finished watching the last season of Downton Abbey, and we're a little bit behind. Most of you probably finished more recently. We've watched this show for years now, and all of the storylines were so neatly tied up in happily ever afters at the end of the show, even more so than I expected they would be. All of the characters who were in love pledged their love and made their vows and had their babies. The characters who seemed aimless or purposeless found their passion, found their integrity and their bonds of loyalty. And we, the viewers, were left free to imagine everyone living out their days in blissful love and purpose. But the truth that we all know so well is that following love and following passion has its ups and its downs as well. Most of us, if we're honest about our journeys, break and must remake our vows and our commitments. Most of us find ourselves at one moment or another asking the question, do you still love me? Or do I still love you? And sometimes we live into all the love and the passion we have promised. But other times, we fail miserably to do so. Sometimes overwhelming passion turns into overwhelming loneliness when life hits a snag or a bump in the road and we can't quite seem to find our way back to each other or back to that path we were carving. I've seen it happen in marriages and life partnerships. I've seen it happen in vocational careers. And I've even seen it happen with people's love and commitment to individual church communities. It's part of being human. Well, Jesus seems to understand that it's part of being human. Certainly seems to understand that about Peter. For all of us who find that our attempts at life and love, commitment and loyalty are full of ups and downs. For all of us who find that our attempts to seek God's love and justice and to follow Jesus are full of plunges of passion and plunges of failure. Simon Peter's story is our story. Simon Peter is an idealist. He's a romantic. He makes all of these big statements and these big gestures of love and faith and commitment. He's the one you remember who leapt out of the boat and tried to walk on water to Jesus. He's the one at the Last Supper who pledges his undying love to Jesus, no matter what comes, no matter what the danger. But he's also the one who, when he steps out of that boat to try to walk on water to Jesus, sinks and has to cry out for help. He's also the one who, on that very night when he pledges he will never deny Jesus, denies he knows him 3 times. Now, with all of these big words and these big gestures and promises, I think Peter really believes they are true. I think they probably are true to his heart in those moments. What I find remarkable about Jesus' love for Peter is that Jesus is as much of an idealist and as much of a romantic about Peter as Peter is himself. He never loses faith in Peter. John's gospel begins in the very first chapter with Jesus renaming Simon, this new follower of his, giving him the name Peter, which means the rock. Skip ahead all the way to the last chapter of the Gospel of John, and it ends with Simon still learning how to be Peter the rock, and Jesus still believing that he can be. Now, it's not the happily ever after like the end of Downton Abbey, but it's an ending like so many endings in our life. It's an ending that is also a new beginning, as our godly plague critic likes to say. Simon learns the lesson that we all learn about following love. Love is not something that we simply choose to follow once. It's something that we choose to follow again and again and again. It's something that takes practice and determination. It's something that takes forgiveness and a willingness to start again when we fall down, as we surely will. I really wish I could be a fly in the air on that beach to watch this conversation that happens between Jesus and Peter. What was it that Jesus was pointing to when he asked Peter, "Do you love me more than these? More than these fish? More than the other disciples?" And why does Jesus repeat his question, "Do you love me?" 3 times? Is it punishment for the 3 times Peter denied him? A way of rubbing Peter's face in his failure? Is it Jesus' way of telling Peter that he doesn't trust him, and that it will take a lot to earn back and build back Jesus' trust? Does Jesus ask him 3 times because it's practice? Because Jesus knows the kind of trials that Peter will face when following love will become quite costly? Or does Jesus ask Peter 3 times, "Do you love me?" because he knows when Peter finally finds a way to live into all of these promises and words and all of his idealism, that he has the capacity to be a remarkable force of love in the world? Does he ask because he knows for Peter to follow love, he will have to choose it again and again, and he will have to be able to forgive himself for his failings and for his mistakes along the way. He will have to not be paralyzed by his failures and learn how to pick himself up again and continue forward. Now, Peter gets hurt that 3rd time that Jesus asks him, "Do you love me?" And he says to the Lord, or to Jesus, "Lord, you know everything. You know I love you." And I believe Jesus did know that Peter loved him. But this is not about Jesus knowing Peter's heart. This moment between Jesus and Peter is about translating Peter's heart and passion into real actions. As a pastor friend of mine commented to me the other day, no one, save maybe God, would remember the Good Samaritan if the Good Samaritan had merely had good intentions of helping the man on the side of the road. Our actions matter. And our actions do not always reflect our heart or our passion unless we work really hard to integrate them. When I was taking some youth ministry classes, a developmental psychologist once explained to me that young teenagers are primarily asking the question, "Do you like me?" or "Do you love me?" It's not until they get later into adolescence that they begin to focus on the question, do I like you? Do I love you? That's the question of someone more mature, further along in the developmental process. Now, of course, those of us who are adults, we know, right, that often our stress and our insecurities can make us revert right back to those early adolescent questions, concerned with whether we are liked or whether we are loved. I wonder how many times a day, or in what situations, you find yourself asking, do you like me? Do you love me? I wonder how often you ask those questions of God. Now, I have a feeling that those might have been the primary questions for Peter, that he spent much of his discipleship journey with Jesus trying to answer. I imagine that might have been what led Peter to jump out of the boat and try to walk on water. He so desperately wanted to win Jesus' approval and affection. John's gospel is the gospel where we hear about this beloved disciple whom Jesus loved most of all. The one who always seems to get this discipleship thing right. And we meet this beloved disciple in 5 different scenes in John's gospel. And each time he stands in sharp contrast to Peter's flailing attempts at discipleship. At the Last Supper, while Peter boasts that he will never deny Christ, which we all know won't be true, this beloved disciple simply enjoys the nearness of Jesus, reclining on his chest, we are told. When Jesus is arrested and taken away, this beloved one runs to the high court, or the courtyard of the high priest. And he goes inside and he doesn't deny that he knows Jesus, even though when Peter enters that same courtyard, he will. This beloved one is the one at the foot of the cross when Peter is missing. The one Jesus asks from the cross to take care of his mother. And when the disciples hear the good news of the resurrection, this beloved one is the one we are told who beats Peter in a foot race to the grave. And on this day, in this story where we meet Peter and the beloved one again, this beloved one is the one who out on the boat when Jesus is calling to them from the seashore recognizes who Jesus is long before Peter does. Peter has been in competition with this beloved one throughout his whole discipleship journey. And it has caused him to be so focused on being liked and being loved. But now Jesus is asking him to go a little deeper, to move into a new step of maturity as a disciple. Jesus asks him to begin focusing on the question, do I love you? Instead of asking, what can I do to impress you? What can I do so that you will like me or love me? Jesus asked Peter to ask, do I love you, Jesus? And if so, what can I do to show that love? And just in case Peter is unsure, Jesus fills in the blank for him. Do you love me? Feed my lambs. Do you love me? Tend my sheep. Do you love me? Feed my sheep. I wonder in your own journey with Jesus, if you are focused more on asking, do you love me, Jesus? Or more on asking, do I love you, Jesus? We all oscillate between the two. But as we grow in our ability to follow Jesus, our focus should shift to that question, do I love you? And if so, what does it look like for me in my moment, in my time and place, to tend your sheep? So wherever you are on your journey of life, of love, of following Jesus, whether you have crashed and burned, or whether you have succeeded in pursuing love, may we all listen to Jesus' question to us. Do you love me? And may we follow where it leads. Amen.